Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast. My name is Nathan Sutherland, and today we actually get kind of a special treat. We are going back to an interview I did last year with a friend of mine named Roger Smith. Now, Roger is a local teacher. He is a dedicated advocate for young people, and he is an experienced coach as well as a teacher. He's worked 30 plus years with a group called NBC camps. They're actually the nation's largest, really the world's largest overnight basketball camp. And that's actually where I met Raj for the first time, was as a camper 20 some odd years ago. It's actually where I met my wife, full disclosure, that will come out in the interview. So we have had this really cool journey of watching Raj both as a mentor and then just as a man of God who loves young people, who loves his family, and who kind of is at the forefront of work with technology and with faith and in the schools, as well as his family, as well as the young people that then come up and work in his organization, because a lot of campers end up working for NBC. He's a man that I love to pick the brain of. And as I was thinking of my sons going back to school this year, they're now 7 and 5, so they're second grade and kindergarten. This interview came up as my wife and I were talking. I was like, you know what? Like, it's such a solid reminder of what we can do to love our children well. So I'm actually, this is a repeat of an interview, but it got so buried. It's like way back in the first like dozen or so interviews we did, or actually entire episodes we did, that I wanted to bring it back up to the top and just give this fresh look at the wisdom that Raj has gained by faithfully following the Lord, a little bit of his testimony that's in there with his two kiddos and specifically his oldest, Luke, and he'll share a little bit about that. And then specifically his insights on what is the place of technology, because it's not something we're going to just run from. As we start school, some of us started school and are now getting put back into our homes, and we're kind of freaking out, right? Or some of us see that coming and the anxiety we feel is real. And I want to help us, and I want Raj's voice to help us parse through what of that fear is something honest concern that we need to act on. What of that fear is just because, frankly, it's stressful and there's a lot of anxiety in life when kids move back into the home again and that wasn't the plan. And what of that fear needs to be handed over to the Lord and say, Lord, this is not something that I should be trying to control. It's something I'm giving to you. And how do we determine, like, what does that look like to love God, to use tech, and to have the gospel at the center of our technology use? And Raj does it amazingly well. So that's our conversation today. So with no further ado, let's get this conversation started. Welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast, a resource for parents who are feeling outpaced and overwhelmed as they raise children in a tech world. As an educator, parent, and tech user, I want to equip parents with the tools, resources, and confidence they need to raise kids who love God and use tech. Raj, thanks for being with us today.
You betcha.
So everyone, we have Roger Smith with us today. He's the VP of NBC Camps out of Auburn, Washington. He's the site director in Auburn, Washington. Yeah. The NBC Camp's a little bigger. He's been a teacher for, is it 30?
30 years. Yep.
30 years now. Yeah. All elementary. Have you taught all grades, or has it been?
Third grade for the first 10, and the last 20 have been fifth grade.
Fifth grade. Yeah. That is fantastic.
It's a beautiful age.
And then as a parent, you're here as well, with two kiddos going into third grade and going into eighth grade.
That's correct.
Which is like right in the wheelhouse of our tech conversations. Yeah. And Roger's been a huge deal. And Anna, in my life, we actually met at NBC camps, which is a whole nother story for another day, because I'm not a basketball player and I should not have been there. But the Lord used that to blow my life up, which was fantastic.
You were awesome, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you married up like all good men do.
So far up, which is just incredible.
Yeah.
But really excited to have you here today to kind of hear from your expertise and your experience in the area of the gospel, because that has been a major area of your camp. I mean, the camp is, we want to make you a better player and we want to make you a better person. So talking about kind of your experience and how that has changed in this revolution. I mean, your career has spanned now from the introduction of the internet and the personal computer to everyone comes with a supercomputer in their pocket. And just kind of, what does that look like on a camp standpoint? What does that look like in an educational standpoint with younger kiddos? And then as a parent, like, how are you navigating this world? So our audience is a lot of parents and a lot of grandparents who are trying to process, how do we connect the truth of the gospel to the technology we live in without just being afraid of everything and hide in a box, like we're told to be in the world but not of it. So my hope today is to kind of pick your brain on some of that and get some of that. So I guess to start us off, why don't you tell us a little bit about your fam and how you came to a point where you were wearing all three hats? Because it's a journey.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bet. Well, first of all, I've been married for 18 years to my beautiful wife named Jess. And we have 2 kids, like Nathan had already said. We have Luke, who's 13, and Lainey, who is 8. And it's been a journey. My son was born with a very special heart. He was a single ventricle baby, so he's had 5 open heart surgeries since he was born. And God really just used that in our lives to kind of just make us really be able to walk the talk of loving Jesus and having faith and knowing that God has a plan. So he teaches us that on a daily basis, as we are so thankful just for his life. And every day we get with him. Lainey came beautifully on a sunny day like today, and just no issues from her end, and was a blessing to us, and a walk of faith to have a heart baby and then decide, no, we're going to try again with a little girl, and know that, hey, listen, if she has a heart condition, then we'll deal with that too. But God blessed us, and she has a perfectly healthy heart. So they are the joys of our life and the gifts of our life, and we are so thankful for them. So that's kind of my parent hat. I started thinking about teaching, even as a high school student, teaching and coaching. And that's when I started working at NBC Camps. NBC Camps was in my life from age 9, and I'm 52. And this will be the first summer in the history of my life that I will not be doing NBC Camps thanks to COVID.
Because of COVID.
COVID-19, yeah. So, but NBC was a place that my parents chose for me to be at, and because it was had a Christian emphasis. And so I grew up going to NBC, then I grew up going on tour with them. They had international tours, and after that tour, some of us were selected to work. And so I started working at camp and coaching there, and realizing how much I loved kids and loved being around kids in that aspect. And so I never stopped working at NBC, and I just kept going on, and I kept moving up and up. I did everything from sweep floors to now running one of our larger sites in Auburn. NBC Camps is almost a 50-year-old camp, and God has continued to protect it throughout every season. And this is a season where he's continuing to do that, hopefully. So
in new ways.
In new ways, that's for sure. So, and then I decided to go to Pacific Lutheran University, where I got my educational elementary degree in both K through 8 and then regular ed, and then K through 12 and special ed. And then I got my master's degree in curriculum and instruction from Go Bulldogs, the Gonzaga University. So
the Gonzaga.
The Gonzaga University. So that's kind of how all 3 hats fit on my head right there. And
that's incredible. I want to kind of step back, because when we talk Luke, we're talking technology and we're coming from all sorts of, but Luke has been an example of how God uses people with special degrees and specialized educations, and then specialized tools. Yeah. Five heart surgeries.
Yeah. 5 open heart surgeries. And his first one was just amazing. We knew nothing about open heart surgery. We knew nothing about any kind of heart conditions, nothing. Congenital heart disease is actually the number 1 defect in the world for young kids to have, whether it be as severe as my son's or just a simple hole in the heart where they can go in and close. It's not really simple, but based upon the spectrum of things, it's one of those things where they can really go in and use now through catheterization and different things like that. They can go through and do a lot of surgeries just through that process. So technology has been extremely advantageous in how that
even on a baby leg. You can
not so much on a baby, but more on a larger human. But it is as a baby they go in and they have to perform open heart surgery. Yeah. That heart is about the size of a small raspberry, and those docs are in there for 4 to 6 hours rewiring, and they are absolutely amazing.
That's incredible.
Children's Hospital in Seattle they're just incredible, and their pediatric cardiology unit is unbelievable. And the nurses there are, we just believe, sent from heaven. They are. We came into contact with so many nurses that not only love Jesus, but were incredible with us and with our journey there. So,
that just excites me, because we talk about technology, and there are some drawbacks at times, right? But to see like we can point to people that are here because God's used this technology. Yeah. So thank you to anyone who is a doctor or a nurse or working in a medical field, because we know that those heart surgeons and specialists, they didn't get there overnight. Yeah. They dedicated decades of their life
Very true.
to begin that career, and then to be able to work on a raspberry-sized heart, right, for 4 to 6 hours is mind-blowing. So I just in hearing that, I wanted to kind of recover. Camp has been incredible. By the way, audience needs to know, Raj, literally when I was at camp, so I went to NBC for just training, because I was a wrestler football player, and then it was summers, and I was like, I need to do something other than just like sit here and get lazy. So I went and just worked out, and I remember D-Day. We would go in for defensive day, go to the gym. There were 3 different rotations to this D-Day, hour and a half long section, and you ran each of them. Yeah. Like, you were up front, defensive position for a solid hour 3 times in a row. Yeah. Which still blows my mind. I was always like, this will probably make sense when I'm an adult. I'm an adult. Like, it's been 20 years. It does not make any sense.
Those are the old days, my friend. Those are the old days. 52 now. I get a defensive stance for about 10 minutes. And then I'm like,
that's good. That's because I'm right down to like 30 seconds. But this is the reason I cycle, because it's so much lower impact. But no, that's incredible. So then you became a teacher. You have worked for 30 years with elementary school kids. I think... Actually, I'm going to jump. Yeah, let's go teach first. Let's walk into that. So let's talk with your teacher hat on. Yeah. I mean, just walk me out. So I'm an 8th grade teacher, so I get this a lot. Sure. I'm going to pass it back to you. Why 5th grade for 20 years?
Yeah. I think for us, and I teach with an incredible guy named Mr. Cranston. We've been teaching together for 30 years. So we team teach. We have a wall that opens up. He is basically my work wife. He is awesome, and I've learned so much from him as well. But I think one of the reasons we've stayed at the elementary level is we get 7.5 hours a day with our kids. The junior high is great, and there's incredible teachers there at the high school and the junior highs as well. But man, they get 15 minutes and then they got to move on. For us, we get our kids all day long. And that was something that has been really the strongest reason why I've stayed at the elementary level, is because the amount of time I get to spend with my 28 kids, or 32, or we started with 40 last year. So but yes, exactly. But we love that amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is huge, right? Like, that's my number one frustration with the middle school was I love that I get to see 150 different kids, but it's 50 minutes. Right. It's a minute and 37 seconds or whatever per kid if I don't teach or answer any question. Like, it's just so segmented. So that is really cool. So then you've watched them come in. So on the tech side, what are some of the benefits you've seen? I mean, over 30 years, again, like green blinking screen with a little cursor, right? 26 years ago to now, where we have one-to-one devices and online platforms. And even COVID has taught us the online fun of trying to teach groups from home through Zoom or whatever. Right. So what have been some of the benefits you can peg of like, this was beneficial, this has been positive for my teaching experience?
Yeah, I think with technology, one of the things that has been helpful is really the creative design of new curriculums that come across that are digital. There's a lot of kids that we're learning that have a lot of different learning disabilities, obviously, as we know, and simple things like being able to, being able to color code sentences with different words that mean different things. Sure. Kids can pick up on those colors. That's a lot easier to do in a computer platform or in a technology platform than it would be, say, in a book where you're having to go through and make these words all blue or these words. You can change the color of screens. So for some kids that struggle with the ability to read, a certain color background now has been shown to make those kids have that easier for them to read. I think the simplicity of being able to use animation, color, and kind of creative design behind how education kind of jumps off the screen. I think those things have been extremely valuable in balance. And I think for elementary kids in particular, I can talk about kindergarten and first grade in particular, the way the alphabet is given, the way words are sounded out, your sight words, all those different things come alive on a screen, where in a book it can be like, that's interesting.
Hard to hold a 6-year-old's attention.
Yeah, but boy, you get them on that, and that's part of the deal that kind of makes it tough, is like, wow, these are all these incredible programs. Right. My kid's super engaged, but the problem is they become engaged for not just 30 minutes, they move into an hour or 2 hours, and then they move to another screen and another screen. So that's where I know we're going to talk about the balance, but there has been a lot of really good things that technology can bring, again, with just making sure that it's balanced and being able to watch and have good boundaries on the time frame that you're using those.
Yeah, because the engagement is awesome, right? That's often as parents, we're like, well, is it educational? Are they engaged and enjoying it? Like, then we're fine.
Right.
But that when they're using screens like that, they're not just learning the alphabet. Like, they're also learning, this screen is fun to learn the alphabet, right? This screen is fun to learn math.
Yeah.
And then the screen kind of is the one thing that doesn't change. And they go, well, I like the screen a lot. Right. And then that kind of becomes like, well, if it's not on the screen, then I'm probably not going to be as engaged with that, right? Like, it almost has I can't even think of it, suppressing effect on what might be a natural level of interest. You almost have suppressed natural interest lower.
Right. And I think the tough
for the sake of engagement.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think that's the tough thing that we're finding out as parents and as teachers and as educators. And the more and more we get into this, the hard thing is that engagement piece is such a big carrot that sometimes we forget. What's going on there is how much stimulus they're getting. And so that stimulus then breeds this automatic. And when it's not there, you lose interest. And so when you're younger and you have that immediately, that causes the kid's ability to be able to stay focused in a conversation, or when you actually do have to get a book out and read and go through, that causes them to disengage sooner. So that's something that we have to find a balance for and be able to level out. And we have to be really, really careful of, I think.
Yeah. Well, and then on that, like, some of the negatives then that are starting to rear their head, obviously some of the attention focus issues of if I'm not constantly throwing up a new carrot, or if the same carrot stays there too long, they're getting flighty on me. What have you seen as some of those drawbacks? We're talking 5th grade. So.
Yeah. And I think, coming into 5th grade now, so many of our students have cell phones, smartphones.
Yeah, I want to touch on that in a minute.
Oh yeah,
I think
good.
I was wondering.
Do you have 15 hours? But I think and tablets, and even my own kids, just the screens at home. I think as good parents, you're trying to always balance that, and you're trying to figure out what's the right amount. But we can definitely tell there, and it's been proven for years. Proven for years in our classroom. Sure. We always used to call them game heads, right? Which would be a term that we would use. Like, we would know within, literally a couple days what kids had been watching more TV than other kids. In the old days, when you had, the old game stations, when those kids were on them all the time, we would know, because those are always the kids in our classroom that would be the least focused. And we would be able to say to them, hey, listen, how much video game time do you get? Oh, I play video games all the time. Well, we knew that going in because they literally could not stay on point. And this is back, this is back 10, 11 years ago even. We're seeing this. And we had said for years, like, there's a problem. Like, if you're going to play a ton of video games and watch a ton of TV, those are the guys we struggle with the most in class. And sure enough, every single time in our own little petri dish, we would be able to see, and we've been barking about that for a long time. Like, you've got to stay off the screens. You've got to balance that out. And so it's nice to have the research now to back us up a little bit, because parents are now starting to take a real serious look at that. Like, okay, this is a problem. The problem now is there's 10,000 more tech things out there than there ever were. So there's a lot more temptation to do and be on different screens. But it was definitely evident long before all the research came out as well.
Yeah, which is, that's one of the things that just drives me bonkers. So in COVID, I'm watching this, right, of kids and where are the kids that I'm still connected with, and I communicate with them. What are they doing? Where are they going? And one of the big things kids will complain about is, well, there's no one outside, right? Like, I go out there, but like I'm the only kid on the street, right? Not who lives on the street, but like I'm the only one outside.
Right.
So then they're like, well, I go to where the other kids are, right? And they're on social media and they're on the games and they're doing that. And it is this kind of cyclical argument of like, well, I need tech so I can be connected, but tech is the thing that keeps me from being connected. And so like that's where the people are, but that's like I'm not making any friends or I'm not developing, or I am, but it's costing me something, right? And I'm not able to maybe be as engaged. And it is an interesting thing. So it's interesting to hear that from the elementary level. At a middle school, we definitely could tell. I know what you're saying, where you have those kids whose social skills are different. Or I could always tell, and by the time sarcasm is developed to its zenith at 8th grade, where I'll be like, oh, that kid's a Reddit kid. Like that kid spends a lot of time on Twitter, right? Like I can just tell, like I know from the memes that kid knows and from the jokes that kid makes, like I know how much time that kid spends online. Like that's a deep diver right there. That is really interesting. Well, I guess, and my piece, I guess I'd go twofold. We'll go parents and then kids. As a teacher, what if you could make one rule for the classroom and every kid would follow it? Like what one rule would you make? I guess it can be related to tech, but I guess just I'm intrigued by if one rule, it's a mandate and everyone's going to say, yes, Mr. Smith, and it's going to work.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, as far as one rule, I think our rule is balance. It's as far as you have to be balanced. Like, we say it all the time. We're not going to try to, and I tell parents a lot too, like you can't isolate your kids from tech because it's there. You have to learn how to navigate it the right way. And so the right way is doing your research, knowing what the tech does to your child's brain, understand what the tech, how powerful the tech is. That
what's the tech?
Exactly. Like on the iPad, you can actually, or on your iPod, you can actually, surf the web. And so, it's amazing to me how many times a parent will come in and not understand the tech that their kids are using. They feel like it's safe. They didn't know there were these guards. So I think the education piece is important for parents. But the one thing that we tell our kids, because to go into a kid in 2019 and 20 and say, hey, listen, get rid of your phone, get rid of your tech, that's not going to happen. And, but to go in and say, listen, you need to consciously think about having balance in your life, but in every area, not just in tech, but in every area, but having balance that, okay, this is what technology does to your brain. This is what it can do. And so educating them on the neuro piece of that, and then being able to get them to buy in. And it's amazing. One thing I will say about the millennial group, for sure, they're incredibly intelligent. They are super, super bright. And we tell them that all the time. You are so smart. And part of that is because they have information at their fingertips. They are able to dive into all kinds of information. They are extremely well versed in a lot of different things, and they know about a lot of different things. And so for them to appeal to their intelligence and their IQ and say, so think about it. If you know this hurts your mind and your brain, and it's amazing how that education, a lot of people think, oh, do they really buy into that? I'm telling you, yeah, they do. They just need to know about it. And then giving them and empowering them to say, you get to make that decision. So that rule of balance, I think, would be, and having them buy in. Now that's 5th grade, right? And a lot of people say, oh, that's a 10, 11-year-old. Do they really? You haven't been in a classroom with a 10 and 11-year-old lately. They can make lots of great decisions. They know and they can buy in. And I think from what we've seen with our kiddos, they're super motivated to do the right thing. And they want to do the right thing. And so, they need to learn really and be educated on how tech is good, but how tech can also hurt them.
Yeah, and I love that because that is, first of all, it's hope focused, right? Like we are focusing on we're not scared of technology. It's not a boogeyman. We're not throwing that out there like you're gonna rot your brain, which is what I was always told when I was gaming growing up, right? And what parents meant was we see a difference in you that is not positive. It's not making you more Nathan. It's making you more of whatever this game is, right? It's sucking some of your soul out, right? And it's replacing it with just empty feelings. And so I think that hope focus is like, man, like you are so smart, and you are so parents when you're listening to this, grandparents when you're listening, and you start to see that we use that term, the reset, right? Does this tech impact your relationships and responsibilities, your emotions, your sleep, your enjoyment, and your time, right? If you can look at those 5 areas and say, no, like my tech does not impede, it doesn't get in the way of my relationships, responsibilities, emotion, sleep, enjoyment, and time, then we're fine, right? Your kid's doing great. Maybe they need to like go get a new hobby, but like they're doing fine on the tech end. But when we start to see like, man, there's this gap, like that kid's coming in and he can't hold a conversation. We don't just blast tech, like we build the conversation, right? We engage that kid in a relationship, and it's something that will help him with. And I love that idea just of what you said of like, these kids are smart and they don't like to feel like they're being gamed, which parents and grandparents, this is the time we cannot handle this conversation like it's a conspiracy. Okay, they do not want to hear about a conspiracy about how those people out there are trying to destroy kids. Because really, at the end of the day, that's not true. These companies are trying to make a profit, and they have found a hyper effective way to do that, which is engagement. And that's what education is getting sold on. They're looking at student engagement. Yeah. This kid is focused on math, and that math score went up. You can prove that, and it's true. Yeah. What's hard to measure is, oh yeah, but that kid's interest in paper math, that kid's interest in focusing for long periods of time off of a screen is going down. And it becomes this kind of difficult conversation. But when we look at it in light of a reset, we can go, yeah, you know what? But your ability to engage relationally, your ability to be happy in life has lowered. Yeah. Even though this other stuff has helped.
And I think and I know you make this in listening to you talk and learned a lot from you as well. And I think there's a big differentiation between educational technology and then the enjoyment of technology. Yeah. The constantly looking on your Twitter feed and seeing all kinds of nonsensical things. I mean, when you, I'm 52, so I can. So parents and grandparents that are out there, I mean, realistically, do you really need to see what you ate on Friday night because your teriyaki dinner looks so great? I mean, the ability to post, and Nathan, I'm sure you've heard this in his podcast or you've read it, but it's so true. This constant ability to share everything that you're doing. Okay, that's a stimulus that I think becomes out of balance and out of whack and makes you a little funky on the other side. The ability to never call anybody, but only text. I was just talking to a young lady who's getting prepared to get a very nice scholarship to go on and play in college. Yeah. And we had to really work on her conversation skills by way of phone. Because of any fault of hers, but everything was done by text. Well, these coaches like to call and talk to you. And if they're spending $30,000 to $40,000 a year, they want to know that you are on the other end of the line and alive. Yeah. And they are looking for that expression. They're looking for that ability to talk and be able to carry on a conversation. Gaming, I know my son has an Xbox, and we use that in balance, but I also know that we can see to it. We call it his game head. Like if he comes off of there and he's been on there for longer than 30 minutes or so, he gets wonky and weird, and he wants to disassociate and decide to almost dumb down his life and use gaming as a tranquilizer for boredom. And that becomes a major issue. So some of these engagement activities educationally, if that's what it was, if it was an educational platform, they definitely, you want to have balance there too, but that's way different than the most of the media usage that my students are doing is not educationally based. Right. It is based upon social interaction. It is based upon gaming. And those are the ones that, as you so eloquently state in several of the articles I've read or heard you speak, is that those are the things that really can cause damage, and they do. They really do.
Yeah, so, and that's where we break the tool tech and the drool tech, right? So doctors saving kids' lives with heart surgery and robotic machines that can go through, catheter systems to repair hearts. Tool tech, right? It's operating at the pace of real life. It's building and creating, and it's being driven by the user, whereas drool tech is what we're seeing, right? Where it's passive and it's faster than real life, and it often has built-in rewards looping us back through where we are being used. And we talk about on social media, right? The idea that you have to pull to refresh your social media. Like they could have just given you that. It's a slot machine trick that's being used, right? Yeah. And if you guys want to read a great book, Hooked by Nir Eyal is a great and that's Nireyal. Hooked is a great book to kind of introduce this concept of what our social media and what these big tech companies are using, and then how those are being implemented in. And he's not saying it's bad, actually. He's actually telling people how to do it, but it's a super interesting read if you're interested, because that is what we're seeing in that blurring, right? Of like, well, now we have educational products being released with this gamification tied in.
Yeah.
And you see some kids getting their faces absolutely eaten off, right?
Yeah.
Where they can't pull out of that task and go to the next one. And we're seeing some of that. So then I guess I want to focus you, because you mentioned smartphones. So I guess with the teacher hat still partially on, let's move to parent and teacher. Smartphones. I guess
I'm just going to tell you, I probably show my age. Even at NBC, it's so funny because over the years, we never used to have to worry about phones coming to camp. And then we ended up stating about 10 years ago and saying, hey, listen, we're not going to allow smartphones.
Is this for campers?
Yeah, for campers. We're not going to allow smartphones. And it was just so funny because most of the generation of people that were sitting there were my age, right? So they remember payphones, right? Well, with camp and all those types of things, like you need to be there and focus. So I would use a 10-year spectrum here. At the beginning of that 10 years, it was like very few. And then, 3 or 4 years in, there was a few more and parents were still great. And then about 5 or 6, 7 years in, that's where we hit this kind of, I could feel the audience in my parent orientation looking at me like, yeah, but it's safety issues and we got to make sure that they can call and they can, whereas we all know when we went to camp, there was zero communication with anybody. And I get that. And I understand that perspective that there does need to be a safety. And yet we were still trying to say, hey, parents, you know what, we're going to make you make the decision, right? We don't want them here. We're not going to be responsible, which is interesting because, 50% of them took them and 50% of them didn't. Right. And so, but then in the last year or so, last couple years, I've noticed more of a willingness. They were excited that I was the bad guy because they would go and say, Raj said you can't have your phone at camp. And so they almost wanted me to say, hey, listen, hold that line. Make sure that they don't need it here. If they need to get their coach has a phone, they can call an emergency. They can grab it anytime they want. We still allow parents to make the decision. And interestingly enough, there was fewer phones at camp in the last couple of years than there were 5 or 6 years ago, which is it's really interesting. But that's just, again, another little petri dish that I'm able to see. I see that movement where parents are starting to understand more and more, and it's kind of a good thing. You hear all kinds of business trips now where they take the phones before they even start the seminars. They put their phones in a basket. Nobody listens. It's socially good social etiquette is to not have your phone sitting on the table. You turn it on off. All those types of things. So people are becoming more and more aware of the issue. I will tell you this, as an educator for 30 years, camp director for 35, there is no single thing that I have seen damage families or relationships more than the cell phone. The ability for kids to get into drama that they don't need to be in, the ability for them to immediately send a message that had given them 30 more seconds to think about they should have never sent. Kids have made more mistakes on the power of a cell phone than in any other venue of media that I have seen. And I tell parents this all the time. It's a distraction to your home. It's a distraction to them at school. It is a distraction to them emotionally, socially, and spiritually. And while it can be a really powerful tool that can allow them to do certain things that are good, excuse me, I think more than not, without very extremely strong boundaries, without extreme boundaries on it, it becomes a device that is hurtful. And because there's no bigger drama than on the cell phone. I mean, you're just involved in things you don't need to be involved in. And so I think I've seen it over and over and over and over again. You ask my students, they will all say, Smitty says, Cranny says, I don't need a cell phone. I don't need a cell phone. And the kids that actually, whose parents have decided to take that away, they have come back and said, I'm so thankful I'm not in the drama at junior high because I don't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
So I think those are extremely dangerous, and they still are, especially when parents just kind of think, oh, it's a phone. I know what they're doing. I kind of check it every once in a while, but man, I've seen a lot of hurt and a lot of damage done with those.
Yeah, and where John Mark Comer is out of Portland, Oregon, and has a book called oh my goodness, what is it? Fight Hustle. The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry is what it's called.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the podcast he did with Jefferson Bethke, but the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Wow, is basically says you got to be more Amish than you think. Right, like our goal isn't be Amish, but you probably have to be more Amish than you think.
Right.
And that idea of like, man, there are so many positives to this, but like, what are we giving up to get there, and what is this cost balance? And yeah, that I love. You just put that so well. This idea of our kids certainly get advantages from that, but the number of disadvantages, the number of things with a kid who's lacking a prefrontal cortex. Until they're 20 something, really, right? Especially in young men, that is so late in developing. And that's the part that inhibits thoughts and words and action, right? That's the thing that lets you go, is this a good decision? Like we're acting and then going, my 6-year-old son, why'd you do that? Right? And he just literally shoved his brother off the trampoline head first, right? Like, why did you do that? Right. I don't. I literally am just now recognizing what I did, Father. Like, I have no idea. That's so good.
I think also there is a choice. And if you are really concerned about your child being able to get in touch with you, you do have a choice. You have a choice for a small phone that only has ability to not text, that only has the ability just to call. There's no camera. My son's cell phone is so stripped down. I think our landline has more options than his cell phone does. So
is it a smartphone? Is it a flip phone? What do you got?
Well, he was really cool at junior high because he was the only kid with a flip phone, and so which was hilarious. His buddies all thought that was great.
Yep, I'm sure he loved that.
He did.
Like,
he actually embraced it quite a bit. Was kind of neat to see. But then they also make a smartphone now that looks exactly like a smartphone.
It's the Gab wireless.
Yeah, Gab wireless. Yeah, and he. There's nothing else.
Does he use that?
He does have Gab.
Okay.
Yeah, and so you have a choice now as a parent, and why? I just think it's important to draw the line. You can draw the line now and go through that little bit of a war with your kid, or you can face them getting messages that they don't intend to get, or pictures that they didn't realize they were getting. And we say to kids all the time, remember, as soon as you hit a delete key on your phone and you think it's deleted, it's not. And so the ability to think that you're cleaning things up, or you're not able to be tracked, and you're not able to be, all that stuff can be unlocked and found. And so anytime you press send on a cell phone, you better understand that there's a footprint. And now, you're going to be held responsible for whatever that says.
Yeah. And I think that's huge. I think you guys should start like a wall where it's just, here's famous people who did what we're asking you not to do.
Right.
And like, we're just going to put them up.
It's a smart idea.
Just a bunch of pictures, because this idea of like, well, that happened to those people over there.
Right.
But like, I'm a good kid. Like, I'm working hard. Like, everybody makes mistakes. And be like, no, like, here's people who they have amazing degrees, and they're powerful individuals, and they're extremely well informed, and they're influent. Like, these are people we would consider important individuals.
Right.
Like, and maybe just post the number of like followers they have on social media. Like, this person has 4 million followers. Like, and this is what they just got. Right. Because I think just in the last 9 months, we could find a lot of individuals who would have some cachet with name brand that you would recognize, and have done some things you're like, really? That is amazing to me that like that occurred, and that you were thinking that would be okay, that would work out for you,
right?
Or that you're surprised that this occurred. And like, I think there's just a shout out Justin Bieber. I think he's had to publicly apologize 28 times, I believe, and he's not 28 years old yet. So when you look at like, all right, so it's like 2 or 3 times a year that he's had to make like formal apologies for things that he's posted or done, and I think with him, it's not about like, well, it hurt his brand, but it's what's this example when someone saw it, it's like, that was awesome. I want to be like, JB. So I think I love that advice that you're giving to people. And when you look at Lainey, then does she have a smartphone yet? Does she have a Gab phone?
No. No.
What's that? So
They
she's
don't-
third grade.
Yeah, third grade. So Luke didn't have any access to any phone till age 13.
Okay.
And then that phone is stripped all the way down, gets turned in at night. And same with their tablets. Their tablets are always turned in. We have similar things to what you have instructed, and other people that understand what this is. So strong boundaries on time frame and minutes used. You are guilty in my house before proven innocent. So you are not innocent and then before guilty. You are guilty first. So we kid them about that a little bit, but we monitor everything. So anything they're on, whatever, we have the ability to see everything. And that's the great thing about now. There's so many. Again, parents, for me, if it's amazing how many things are out there that parents, again, and I'm coming from an educational standpoint, just don't know. They just, and that's why I'm so thankful, Nathan, that you're doing this, because I think you're alerting us to, hey, there's all kinds of things you can do to stop the invasion. You know what I mean? And there's all kinds of safety measures that you can do. I think the biggest thing that hurts parents is lack of education on what social media is, on what it does to your brain, and what actually is out there. You have to be smarter and more aware than your child is on the new programs, the things that they can put on their phones, the things they can download that look like normal apps. They even have apps that look like they're educational apps that you can download to your phone, but actually they're communication apps that get around parents even be able to see texting or anything. I mean, there's so many things that I could go into where parents have said, well, we thought this, well, we thought that, and their kid just owned them because you didn't pay attention, you didn't research the app, you just let them download. It's a free for all. Yeah. There's no good thing that happens after 6 o'clock on a cell phone. So it's not good to have anybody having, their phone in their bed at night, texting and talk. There's nothing as an educator or as a mentor to lots and lots of kids or a coach that we've ever seen. Even the college programs are going around these days, and basketball programs are collecting cell phones at night. Okay, so there's guys. Yeah. I mean, that's how big a deal it is. It's like it's just too much of a distraction, and I think that's really good to let parents know. Listen, there's always an out. You always have the opportunity to sit down and talk and bring it in love and say, hey, listen, we care about you. We love you. Here's some things that we need to do as a family and work together towards that.
Yeah. And I think because there is this feeling, like I always get parents like, how do I know everything they're going to do forever? And I'm like, well, you talk to them.
Right.
Like that's how, because let's say we get this thing, buttoned down tight enough that this kid's never going to make a mistake without you knowing about it. At the end of the day, if there's no rapport, if there's no relationship, like God knows everything we do, but that doesn't make us stop. Like what makes us stop? Like the love of God, like recognizing like, why would I make this decision that hurts someone who loves me so much when I could be with the person who loves me so much and enjoy that even more? Like this is just it's a shadow. It's a lie. And the way our kids are going to grow to hate the things that are hurting them is to actually be in the presence of the God who loves them.
I agree 100%. I think one of the blessings God has given us is people like you and other people that are out there in the industry right now, giving us the opportunity to be able to share with our kids. We can't underestimate our kids' own intellect to say, I don't want this to hurt me. I can't tell you enough that we have incredibly bright kids and they want to do what's right. So, but it's up to us to give them the information. And guys like Nathan have provided us as parents the opportunity to share specific scientific-based research about how this neurologically hurts you and the pathways that it's creating. And I just think sometimes we don't give our kids enough credit to think like, oh, they'll get that.
How do you determine if a kid is like, how do you define success for kids? Like when they're, because it's a big part of education. Like we're preparing you for future success, right? It's success in whatever field, basically to have as many opportunities for success as possible. It's when my 8th grade was like, why does this even matter, right? Because the grades don't matter in 8th grade and you get into all this stuff. And be like, man, like I want you to be able to like do the thing you love and not go, man, I wish I had the opportunity, but now it's like, it's unreachable for me. Like you don't need to go do these things. You don't have to go to college.
Right.
But if in 4 years you get there and want to go to college, like I want that to be an open door for you and not a regret. So when you talk to your fifth graders or to your campers or to your mentors or mentees that are mentors for other kids, what do you say? What do you kind of set out for them as that idea?
Well,
success.
The idea for success is that you outwork. You never get outworked ever. And the old concept of work's done at 5, I stay till 5:30. Practice starts at 4, I show up at 3:30. The consistency at which you can teach yourself how to work hard and be balanced so you don't become a workaholic, but the fact that you can outwork the other person in your field is where the performance gap decides to narrow. So we talk about performance gap all the time in my classroom. There's 3. You have great, you have good, and you have poor. It doesn't matter if you are a teacher, if you're a pastor, it doesn't matter what occupation you're in. You're either great, you're good, or you're poor. And in between that is a space, and that's what we call performance gap. The best way to narrow performance gap is work ethic. Work ethic, work ethic, work ethic. It is much easier to go from poor to good, in my opinion, than it is from good to great. Good to great is where you start to separate in the 80-20 rule, where you start to decide that you're going to be uncommon because you're going to do the little things well. And so the interesting thing about this is the more that we talk about that as fifth graders, they eat this up all the time because they're not used to hearing it as much. So they love the idea of trying to be uncommon. We do a little thing called mental toughness where we'll sit, and I do it with every group that I'm ever in, whether there's 300 campers or 28 fifth graders or 17 college kids. I'll say we're going to go into mental toughness. So we're just going to sit quietly. It's obviously a biblical principle and discipline as well to sit in silence. We're just going to do it for 1 minute and see how 60 seconds, what that does to you in 60 seconds. And it's amazing. After 60 seconds, they're like, oh, that was a long time. You know what I mean? And that's where, so in our class, we try to build that up. Like, hey, we're going to go mental toughness for 2 minutes and we're going to go to 3 minutes. And that's the good news, is that you can build that within kids and within people. And so my big thing will always be hard work pays off. Hard work pays off. And doing the small things well to make the big things happen. Be uncommon and do what everybody else is not doing. And work to be somebody that God has anointed to be the very best that they can be. And I think that all of us have that inside of us, and God gives us that gift. We just need to unlock it.
I don't know about you all, but hearing Raj talk like this, it gets me pumped up. Makes me want to go do wall sits and run the mile as fast as I can. But my hope for you in this conversation is that you heard something that you can take and pray through and ponder and even ask your kids about, something that will encourage you as you are raising your children in a modern tech world, as you're sending your kids to schools that are filled with technology, and as your kids are navigating their own lives and their own faith, as they're wondering, what does it look like to love God and to use tech? Because we need more than just really good rules. Rules are going to help our kids. They're going to provide safe boundaries. They're going to provide great conversation pieces and model what it looks like to love God in action. But good rules are not enough. If they were, we wouldn't have to move past the Old Testament. We would need no new covenant. But we do. We need hearts that are renewed, and that reality of a Holy Spirit that indwells, that changes us from the inside out, impacts our technology as well. So I hope you heard something from Raj that will get you thinking this week. If you have any questions, you can email me, nathan@gospeltech.net. You can find us on social media if you're on there, at Love God Use Tech on both Instagram and Facebook. And you can also visit our website, gospeltech.net, where we have a lot of resources. We have the Gospel Tech Workshop on there where you can make a family tech framework that establishes kind of the ability to fight for your family, not just with them when it comes to technology. And you can join us next week as we continue this conversation about how we can love God and use tech.